today is all about July 4th, about fireworks, anxiety, even things that happen at New Year and Christmas and any celebration. And I know that you have some things to share today. So I just wanted to say thank you, everyone, for being here. I know this was kind of short notice, last minute, but we really appreciate all of you being here. And I know that you're going to really enjoy it. So Linda, I will hand it lovingly over to you.
Thank you so much, Ross. And I was thinking a lot today about July 4th and how do we change the attitude that we have, because I know I've received emails from several people just saying, what can we do for July 4th? Our dogs are just so terrified by this noise. And I'd like us to take this opportunity to combine the celebration that we feel for the gratitude of our country and July 4th celebration today, and tomorrow rather, and combine it with using this opportunity to overcome the fear that our dogs have and the fear that we're dealing with, and change that to a place of trust. And I just I brought up a few books. This book is Molecules of Emotion by Dr. Candace Pert. And the reason I bring this up is that something I intuitively got in the late 70s was this concept that we hold fear at the cellular level. And that what we have discovered that by moving the skin, and just follow me with this, put your hand lightly on your other hand so you can actually see what you can do to help release fear at the cellular level. So you put your hand lightly on your other hand and support the weight of your own hand. And simply, I'm holding with my thumb and I'm moving the tissue on my hand. It's about moving the tissue in 1 circle and a quarter, which is actually a spiral. It took me years to figure that one, to finally come to that point, realizing this is a spiral. It's the spiral that is in all of nature. And that what we can do is release fear at the cellular level. And one of the things to consider is catch the skin, imagine the face of a clock so you know where your 6 o'clock is. And on us, it's like, and on the dog, it's toward the ground. So this will be my leg if I'm a dog, right? And I catch the skin at an imaginary, like put the clock on here and your 6 o'clock, and the clock was just off the wall, the old fashioned kind, right? On your hand, and catch the skin at 6 o'clock and watch how my fingers curl. You see how I curl from 6 to 9, 9, 12, 12, 3, 6, and 9. Now do a little pause and actually do a little gentle circle back to 6. Not a circle, sorry, a movement back to 6. So you've got a quarter of a circle from 6 to 9, little curve. 9 to 12, look at my fingers straighten out. When I go over to 3, I come back to 6 and curve up toward to 9. Pause and go back to 6 and release. Now, one of the things that is so incredible about this Tellington method is the fact that we have these techniques that you can learn, which are very logical. And then we have the philosophy. And the philosophy is really based on a lot of what is now scientifically proven. And I'm going to show you some of this because I think you can you can release that fear that you have. Your dog is really going to lose it. We make these pictures in our mind. And one of the basic philosophies of the Tellington method is realizing that, if we want to change the behavior of our dog, that fear-driven behavior, we have to change our mind about it. And through the techniques of the Tellington method, we actually can bring our dogs to a place of, instead of reacting out of fear, understand what's going on around them and come to a place of peace. Now, the reason I brought up this book, Molecules of Emotion, just bear with me a little bit, because what I'm planning to do and hoping to do is give you a basis of understanding of, and change your mind to release this, oh, my dog's gonna lose it. Because we're gonna give you the techniques to overcome that, but also the philosophy. And one of the most important books in my life, and I've had so many changes in my life and influences, by a little book called Love is Letting Go of Fear by Dr. James Jampolsky. And it's a basic book, this idea that we can let go of fear. And with the TTouch, we can influence the body to release it at the cellular level. Now, how I came to that point, 1978, I was working on a very tense, nervous horse, dressage horse, for a very large group of people, just showing them some of the work that I was doing. And this was actually before the circular TTouches. It's when I was still doing the Feldenkrais, beautiful Feldenkrais work on the horses. And I had simply put my hands on just to give the horse, in this case, which you can do for your dogs, a sense of themselves. And as I was just quietly doing that, somebody from the audience, and there were about 600 people there, called out, "Linda, what are you doing?" And I intuitively answered, "I'm releasing fear at the cellular level." Now, you can maybe imagine, this was before AIDS, and I mention that because after AIDS, there was a much greater interest in understanding in cells. Now, you can get all kinds of wonderful information about cells and cell intelligence just from Googling it. But in those days, you couldn't. And when I said, I'm releasing fear at the cellular level, because that's what we want to do with your dogs when they are afraid of these loud noises and the firecrackers, I thought, okay, stick a cork in your mouth, Linda, because I had no idea what I was talking about. And so that night, I called a friend of mine, Dr. Alice DeGroot, and I had worked with her extensively. She is the person who invented the Halti. That was her invention. And I said, do you think, and she was an acupuncturist, she was the vet advisor at that time for Equus magazine. And I said, do you think it's possible that cells could hold fear? And she said, Linda, it's only in the Western world that is not common knowledge. And this is why it gave me a little like, okay, I'm not like, And I want to actually point out to that, where does that information come from? I always used to think, well, it's like from the horse angels, it's like, and actually it's intuitive. And I love the definition of intuition from a little book called entitled Intuition by Judy G. Intuition is a manifestation of divine consciousness within you. Receiving and understanding its messages will change your life and help you find your true path. And that's what we teach in our online courses, TTouch for You. And in many of, that's what I teach in all of my courses, it's at the heart of TTouch. And that's why I held this book up by Dr. Candace Pert, because this was published in '93, many years after I got that intuitively and had the validation from Dr. Alice DeGroot. And Candace Pert proved in studies at the National Institute of Health that indeed our body, our cells, actually hold trauma and experiences, and we think it's in our head due to these chemical connections we have. Now, I point that out for those of you who like to read, because realizing that there's this validation behind it for me is, it's like helpful, because I really appreciate this merging of science and spirituality. This concept, it's the divine consciousness within that we're actually connecting to with our animals also. And so I'm going to show you now some techniques, and then I'm going to show you some other books that have really helped me to be able to carry out this basic philosophy we have, this idea that if we want to change the behavior, now we're talking about the fear-based behavior of our animals to loud noises and fireworks, then we have to change our mind and hold the infinite possibilities for change. Because if we just say, oh, my dog is always afraid and runs under the bed, runs through screens, just completely loses it, which we hear a lot, then you're not going to be able to change. You'll stick to that fear. And what I'd like to add to this is the idea, use this idea from this July 4th fear-based move to appreciate a gift from the animals. And that is, had I not developed the circular 1 1/4 circles, and it is the base of this work, the Tellington-TTouch and method. And for those of you who don't know it, because I see many names here who I don't know, maybe your first time, the Tellington method is not just about TTouch. TTouch that you're going to see today is just part of it. But we also have the ground exercises that is called the Learn Parkour in Europe and German, and the Playground for Higher Learning. This concept, by specific exercises, we can teach our dogs to focus, to listen, to make good choices. And of course, we're not just talking about today, but you want to do this to your animals on a regular basis. And it only takes a few moments. So we also have, besides the body work, besides the special exercises that we do on the ground, these Playground for Higher Learning, we also have specific equipment that we use. And that's really makes a huge difference. And that's one of the pieces we're going to show you today. And then we have the philosophy. So I'm going to show you first, Ross, if you could pull up one of my most interesting personal cases, because we've been making a difference with dogs for a fear of loud noises, for gunshots, for fear of fireworks at New Year's. And if you can pull up, please, the pictures. I'm just going to push through this because we're more interested. Hold this. Just actually, since we've go back one. This is one of the techniques that you can use on one of the touches that is really helpful, because you see my left hand is on the chest, making a connection through the whole body to the tail. And the TTouch that we do on the tail with the circular touches beginning at the base of the tail and then working all the way down the tail, think of it, the tail is a major indicator of the emotions of a dog. If it's tucked against the whole, right, tight against the underside of the dog, if the dog is up in the air, on alert, when they're like overstimulated, we can work from the base of the tail. And I've been working on this dog for probably 20 minutes to get to this point. And see, he's like really leaning into my hand. Now, what I'm specifically doing, bringing awareness to the tail that affects the emotional centers of the brain, and also helps to support and activate the cranial sacral work. And that cranial sacral fluid that runs along the spine is really important for the basic health of the mental, physical, and emotional health of our animals. So let's go to the next one that we have. this slide. Just hold on to this a minute, because these July 4th issues, loud noises and parties, why your furry friend may not like them, looking at how our animals behave and react. What I was saying before, I mean, I would love to know how many of you here have dogs who tend to hide under things, to try to run. I've had dogs run through screens. And I see here, can you talk about dogs without tails? Yes, I'll go to that after. It's a good point. And now switch to the next one, because besides the tail work, let's see, we've got Rainy, that's our doggy Rainy Westie, who's now over the Rainbow Bridge, but I feel her with me every moment of the day practically, as I'm sure all of you do who've had your beloved animals cross the Rainbow Bridge. Let's go on, please. Now, here was Rainy. She was about 12 years old at this point. She'd never been afraid before of fireworks. But for July 4th, like 6 months before that, we'd taken her to the fireworks downtown. And that wasn't the smartest thing I've ever done, because we were really close to them. And when they went off, she just like bolted. And at that point, you know, it's funny because we really work with harnesses most of the time, but Rainy came from, I was really lucky to get her here in the island because we don't have many choices, and we don't have many choices of small dogs at our shelter. So I wanted a small dog. So we had gotten her, and she'd been trained for show. And she was like finger light on a collar, but on a harness. She was quite funny because she wouldn't move. So we had her on a collar, and when the fireworks went off, she just slipped that collar and bam, she was gone. I thought, oh my God, this poor thing, through the crowds, you know, terrified, running. But fortunately, she only went, I don't know, maybe 100 yards, maybe not even, maybe 50, and then stopped, and we were able to catch her. And of course, you know, we left at that point, but she was really afraid. So 6 months later, when the fireworks started right outside our house, she was by the Christmas tree, and everything's open here in Hawaii. So the doors were wide open to the lanai. And she just started shaking so hard. Look at her little ears are just like pulled back. And I wish I had a video, because her teeth were just like banging so hard. And I was afraid she would break a tooth. That's how bad her teeth were chattering. Now, fortunately, she had enough trust in us that she didn't run. She just like hunkered down, like sat there and held her breath. So I went over and I started doing the ear TTouches on her. And I'm going to show you here on my black friend. Can you see there? So from the base of the ear, oops, you see where my hand is? Base of the ear, I do a circle with the fingers, circle at the base, and then a slide out. And because you'll see in the next slide, her ears normally were standing up, I took them upward. On a dog with this type of ears, I go sideways, not down. Now, why do I make a circle in the corner? At the base of the ear, because that's where the triple heater meridian runs. And it runs down the base of the ear, down the neck, across the shoulder to the paws. And why is it important? Because it's a triple heater meridian that affects the digestive system and the respiratory. So when your breathing is really high and the breathing is high and the dog is really tense in the gut area, that helps to regulate everything. So it's a gentle slide. You don't pull hard. You just, I treat the ear like it's a rose petal. Now try this on your own ear. Actually, I'm telling you this, and you have to do it very gently, because this work for humans is a gift from the animals. I first discovered this in 1958 on my endurance mare, Galita, when she was going to be put down by our veterinarian after a 4-day colic. And in those days, there was no chance of actual surgery, not like today. And what I discovered totally by accident is because I wanted to say goodbye to, oops. I wanted to say goodbye to her before the vet came. He was on his way. And she had a very high respiration, 80, and it should have been 40. And she had a subnormal temperature. Her body she was in shock. And she had not defecated for 4 days at that point, even though, you know, we had fluids going into her. And this was all really important for the discovery of this ear work, because just intuitively, I thought just to say goodbye, I would just do like a slide from the base of the ear to the tips. And this is the basis of this work that can make such a difference to yourself and your animals. So her ears were like ice cold and just soaking wet. And so I just did the slow, I was just really sad and saying goodbye to her, I thought. And I don't know how long I did it, maybe 10, 15, maybe 10 minutes. One ear and then the other, just slowly. And suddenly her ears started to get dry. And after a bit, they started to get warmer. And what happened then, she lifted her tail and defecated, and that was the end of the impaction that she'd had for 4 days. It took me, it was 1979, like from 58 to 79, before I discovered why that had worked. And I was giving a demonstration in Germany, and a veterinarian came along and said, where did you learn acupuncture? And I said, well, I didn't. And she said, well, how come you're following the meridians? Well, I'm just following my fingers. And intuitively, which you also can do. And so I went home with her for 3 days, and her husband had just given a presentation to veterinarians. He was a vet in Paris at the veterinary conference, and on the effects of the acupuncture points in the ear. And he told me that around the base of the ear is the triple heat meridian, and that affects the digestion and respiratory system. And so I realized that's why it made a difference for my mare at that point. And you just slide, you do the whole ear. And I work on the ear of a dog as though it's a rose petal. You don't want to squish it, you don't want to break it, you don't want to pull, no, just gently. And the same thing on your own ear, be gentle. It's just like, for those of you who know the work, it's very gentle, not a whole lot more than a whisper. So I put my thumb behind, because I want you to know this too. When you're afraid that your dog's going to go into shock and get totally terrified, start working your own ears like this, because that will help to bring you down to a place where you can think also. So the ear TTouch is what I did on this little dog Greenie. And what I did was put this wrap, a green wrap, and it's actually probably exactly like this wrap. Can you see, Ross? The way you put this on, you can buy an Ace wrap and buy the best quality Ace wrap, not the cheap ones, because the elastic isn't tight enough. And for fear like this, I use these wraps, and they actually come from the horse world, and it's a really good hold. And normally we just lay the elastic like this. See if I can do this. So I put it, let me roll in. Woohoo! Woohoo! I was hoping. Can you come and help me and hold this dog for us? Okay, there's what it looks like. And the reason I chose a colored one, green promotes healing. So it makes a difference what I think, what color you Yes. Of course, you can also, I think now on Amazon, I haven't looked at it for a long time, but I think you can get them on Amazon in colors, but make sure it's not the sticky kind. Wait, can you pull that table back and hold him a little bit so I can have my hands free? Let me slide my chair back so they can see a little better. If you would take that slide down that's on, please, you can see more. Let's get rid of the slide that's up there right now with, or Ross, somebody take it there, thanks. Now, wait, let me hold this. Now, I've got to stand up, Roland. Hold this dog. Then stand up. And now, there. So I take an elastic wrap, and an ace wrap that's, you know, the normal brown is better than none. I hold it just a little off the middle, one end longer than the other, bring it around the chest, wrap one, and I just do a really simple wrap like this, quarter wrap, and then across it, and then I go underneath. And in this case, if the dog is really afraid, I want just for a short time to have it snug, and I can use the Velcro on this to snug it. This is quite a big dog, and so you might, like sometimes on some dogs, just to get this quarter wrap that you see here, we might even use 2 on a really big dog, and on the small dog, you'll just wrap this one more time. Now, what this does, can you take him please, is give them boundaries. And my sister Robin has written a whole book on these wraps, but that simple wrap, that quarter wrap and maybe one time more around really helps to bring the body, the dog into the body. Because think about it, if you're so afraid, have you ever heard this statement? Can you turn that on so I can see it? This statement that I was so afraid I was out of my body. Well, that's what happens with our dogs. They're like out of the body. And we can bring them in with this 1 1/4 circle over the whole body. Keep him here, Roland, where I might have to put my hands on him again. Bring the dog close enough that I could reach him. Okay, thanks. So what I'd like to, so what happened, show the next slide. I'm talking story because I want you to know the background behind this, and that's what we do in Hawaii, we talk story. Let's see the next slide, there. Now this was like 10 minutes later from the ear TTouch, which stopped the banging. So it was, she was shaking, but her teeth weren't banging. And then I put the wrap on her, and this is lying on the couch like 10 feet away, only maybe 15 minutes later. And she just lay there quietly, didn't move off the couch for the whole time. It was over an hour that the fireworks were going on. And interestingly enough, after that, she wasn't afraid. Now, I'm not guaranteeing that that will work with your animals, but we've had so many success stories with this. I want to read you a couple of this. I asked for people to send in their stories, and this is one that helps with fireworks. I had a great message on my answer phone the other day from the journalist who did an article for Your Dog magazine on preparing a dog for bonfire night that they have in the UK. I suggested that we use her dog for a photo shoot. It was an elderly Bouvier cross who hates loud noises. Roland, can you show me how to scroll this? I'm on Roland's computer and it's not, oh, oops, you got a screen scroll. We have different types of computers. He was an elderly Bouvier cross who hates loud noises and had a really difficult time on bonfire night. The journalist rang to say that she was getting the dog ready on Saturday night with his body wraps as people let off fireworks during the build-up of bonfire night. This is a transcript from my answer phone message. Hi, it's Karen. Just to say, did the body wrap, did the tail TTouch that I showed you. Where are we? And it's absolutely brilliant. Little Boris, who normally runs around going like an idiot, just laid down and went to sleep. It was absolutely wonderful. When he woke up and looked a little worried, I did more TTouches and he went back to sleep. It was great. Thank you very much. This is from Sarah Fisher in the UK. And another story that we got from Dr. Daniela Zuer. She's a practitioner. She's actually a veterinary behavioralist and one of our practitioners and instructors for companion animals and also for people. A major TTouch moment for me and Hobo. The other day, my neighbors were using a nail gun it's just like the gunshots that many of the dogs we work with are afraid of. A nail gun, right? To frame the garage. Hobo is always freaked by noises like this, fireworks, a fire crackling, etc. He heard the noise and started his usual behavior, trembling and trying to escape from the sound. Well, I did a half wrap on him and some TTouches, and within a few minutes, the trembling stopped and his tail came up. After about 5 minutes, he was totally relaxed and following me around the house, tail wagging like there was no horrible noise outside. I left the wrap on him until I was sure that the noise had stopped. I'm so happy that I finally found something to calm his fears. And we've had reports like this for years. I mean, for instance, in Colorado, when I lived there in the 70s for a while, and we were up in Crested Butte where they had like unbelievable lightning storms and thunderstorms. And people had they had to keep their dogs tranquilized when they thought that a thunderstorm was coming. That was the only help that they had at that time. And we've had helped so many animals with this half wrap and with the TTouch. Now, I wanted to slide down again, please, to another slide. I want to show you another possibility. This is the Thunder shirt. And the dog on the left is Mandy Pretty's dog. It's a wonderful dog. And that's a green Thunder shirt. That's the original style. And you can still order the TTouch. If you ask for the TTouch Thunder shirt with our logo on it, you can get it in green. Otherwise, it comes in this dark gray. And this is, I can't tell if this is the new sport shirt or not, but they have a new, it's called the Thunder Sport shirt, and it's a different material. So for those of you in the summer or in the hotter climates, it's like see-through holes. And you can just see the sport shirt. It comes in pink and this dark charcoal color. So do another slide, please, because my sister, Robin Hood, is a really, this shows you a better picture than my dog. This was the half wrap, like I went, it's one time more around the chest, cross over the withers, come down around the abdomen and come up again. Oh no, that's the half wrap. Now, down on the right, you see the Thunder shirt. Give me another slide, please. And I want to show you my brilliant sister. This is the book all wrapped up. And that's my book, Getting in TTouch for Your Dog. You can get those on Amazon, or you can go on our website. If you're in Canada, you can go to Robin's website at ttouch.ca in Canada. And ours is ttouch.com. Let's give me another slide, please. I'm looking for my brilliant sister's, one of her new inventions.
Hey, Linda.
The one with the dog, the wrap on the dog, on the head. It's one that Ross sent me first. Keep going.
I'm not seeing it in here. Let me
Okay, well, maybe you didn't get it.
Let me go look for it real quick.
Ross sent it to me. It was
Okay.
within the group that he sent. So
Okay. Let me go look for that.
So let's go back to the tail. There, that. I just want to go back to this tail, because one of the questions that came up was, what do you do if your dog doesn't have a tail? And in one of my books, it's a book, it's a paperback book by Penguin, actually. It's been on the market for many, many years now. It's a little book talking about TTouch for all animals. And I talk about what you do for phantom limbs. In the case, for instance, if you've got, in that book, I'm talking about a wild swan who'd lost a wing. But we want to talk about dogs. So if you, I'll give you a typical example of a Doberman who was really aggressive toward men or moving things like bicycles. And one of the things I learned many, many years ago, actually in the 70s, was the idea that when an animal has like undesirable behavior, there's something going on in the body that has a tendency to influence that. And in this case, it was the Doberman's like one vertebra, not more than an inch long, and it was straight up all the time. Interesting if you think about it. If the tail had been following that line, because they're born with long tails, where that would indicate the emotional situation, which would be a high emotion. So what I found when I felt the dog's tail, it's like rigid, you couldn't move it. And so I just took, like, you put your thumb on one side and I sort of put my other three fingers around the tail, and you, with the tiniest movements, tiniest circles, holding with the thumb and moving with one of the fingers, or holding with the fingers and moving the thumb, doesn't matter what you do. I went all over that tail and just gently touched it, and you couldn't move it at all in the beginning. But as I did a little circle and a quarter on that 1 inch stub, finally, I don't know, probably took 5 minutes, the tail began to release. And then I did touches along both sides of the spine to the tail. And then the tail started to release. And the dog's head relaxed a little. So think about it. If they're on alert, the head is up. Of course, in some dogs, it can be the opposite, right? Depends on the breed. So his head was up, his head started to relax, his tail started to relax. And he was very different because we had him as a subject of aggression for our film that I was making at the time. And he was really like not very friendly with the film guy, the crew, and that really made a difference. So I just want you to think about what I started off with, this idea that we have the body work, the TTouches, we have the ground exercises, the playground for higher learning, the labyrinth, different types of ground that we work on. We have the equipment that we use. We have a special way of leading dogs with a double leash attached. Go back to where you were, Wes, where the dog with the purple head wrap is what I want, yes. We have these special leashes that we have, and you'll see if you haven't been on here before, we, on the community, the Tellington TTouch community, which is a closed group for subscription, every week we have different webinars. And this is one of my brilliant sister Robin Hood's inventions. It's called a thinking cap. And it's over the ears and around the chin like this. And it's fascinating how, I haven't tried this yet in the cases of fear of loud noises and thunder, but it's only logical to think that it could really help, because it brings the dog present, into a state of presence. That's what the wrap does. It brings them to a place of having boundaries. And just take a look at this, and actually the color really makes a difference. Now, I want to give you some ideas of some of the books that have really made a huge difference in my life. Actually, I'm going to start with this one. And this is Greg Braden's book, The Spontaneous Healing of Belief. And there is a sentence in here that I believe is really important for you to understand when you begin to use these techniques that I've described. And that is the role that energy plays in the behavior of our animals and our relationships. Because our interest with this work is that we can enhance with the techniques and the philosophy and the equipment, we can affect the behavior of an animal, the performance, the well-being, mental, physical, emotional, that you can do, and the relationship. And that relationship is really influenced by our energy. And I'm talking about the energy that Greg Braden talks about in this book, the concept of quantum science energy that is every thought we have. So think about it. My dog is always terrified for loud noises and thunder. Change possibility and just hold this concept of how would you like them to be? Because every thought we have makes a difference. Every emotion that Greg raves about, every emotion, every feeling we have, what might happen, and every belief, that's energy in the concept of quantum science. And you know how our attitudes, emotions, and feelings, how that affects us. So know that you can make a difference with your dog just by realizing, wow, now I have these Tellington techniques that I can use, and the equipment, the wraps, the thunder shirt that actually was influenced by this work. And that you can make a difference with your own dog. Now, this little book, I believe in miracles, and I believe that we create them, and just by knowing that they exist. Now, this little book is called Secrets of the Lost Mode of Prayer. These are all on Amazon, by another book by Greg Braden. And it's the hidden power of beauty, blessings, wisdom, and hurt. And I use this little book, and I'm just going to give you a little example. I was in southern France for a week with friends, with Frederic Pignon and Magali Delgado, and they had been in a terrible automobile accident, and at first the thought was that she was killed. I mean, this was a very emotional thing, and so I flew to southern France to be with them and to do TTouch with her when she came out of the hospital. And about the third night, we were at a big expo in southern France. And by the way, if you don't know Frederic Pignon and Magali, if you don't know them, you can Google them and see the magic that they do in their show. It's really incredible. And Fred attributes this work that he does to energy. And so I'm there with them, and they come back on the second day of the expo, and they're just like, they're devastated because their 18-year-old dog, this little poodle type little dog who was basically blind and deaf and only allowed Magali or Fred to touch her, she had disappeared. They'd gone home at night late. Of course, I don't think they got home till 1 in the morning, and she was gone. And they searched and searched and searched, and other people said, oh, she's gone off to die. I don't believe that one. I don't. And so I'm at 2 in the morning, I'm in the bathtub, and I'm just really praying, and I'm thinking, and I'm really kind of upset that she's gone. And I thought, wait a minute. Think of this book. Hold the possibilities that she's just fine. Call in her angels, which I did. And I just held this. I really held that she is going to be fine and she's going to be found. Well, they came back about 2 in the afternoon the next day, and she had been found 3 kilometers. We're talking about this little dog, never, I mean, she totters when she walked, and she'd never been off the property before. She'd wandered 3 kilometers, and some little old lady, younger than I am, found her. She was there feeding the ducks in this pond, and this dog was like wandering around, obviously lost. And it's so funny because she picked her up and put her in the car and took her to the vet. Now, it's a miracle to start with that she could pick her up and put her in the car, but I don't know about the rest of you, but I am absolutely certain, and I know for a fact, that dogs understand when we're going to rescue them. And I'm going to be talking about this on Saturday in my webinar. How do we know that dogs and horses, what are the signs that we see of what they actually understand about what we're thinking and feeling? And I've got some great stories. So they took her to the vet, she was chipped, and she was fine. And I am I'm certain that if we just stayed in that place of, oh my God, she's gone, and da-da-da, I'm not sure that this would have happened and this miracle would have happened. Interesting. And this little book, if you're interested in this, this is one of the first books that influenced me about and gave me the real passion I have for quantum science. And just in the introduction, if you just read the approximately 10 pages of the introduction and get an idea of how times have changed and how quantum science allows us to know that we really do create our own reality. And you can open this book anywhere. It's actually The Intention Experiment by Lynn McTaggart. And change your life and the world. And The Intention Experiment this is by Deepak Chopra. The Intention Experiment is an extraordinary advance in our understanding of consciousness as a field of all possibilities, where intention orchestrates its own fulfillment. Where intention orchestrates its own fulfillment. If you want to empower yourself and use the laws of intention to manifest your material reality, read this book. And this intention, knowing that we have the tools. We have the tools for the TTouches, which are very logical. You learn it logically, and then you begin to just apply it intuitively. So if you don't know this work, join our community, because Robin or Mandy or I and other of our wonderful, wonderful teachers from around the world have weekly live teachings and weekly webinars. And join us. And this is my dog book. It also has a video that goes with it. And this is the second edition. My first one has Rainy on it. And I would just like to see, now Ross, I'm talked a long time without seeing if there are any other questions that come up. And I didn't finish answering, what do you do if you don't have a tail? So on that Doberman, I just did the tail that was present, and then you follow the tail where you think it might be going based on where that nub is, if they have one. And it's amazing what you can do, because that image is still in the brain, and you can influence the dog by giving them a sense of their whole tail in this case. So do we have, I'm going to see if I can take a look.
I don't see any recent questions, but I just posted asking if anybody had any last minute questions.
There's Amy, by the way, Amy, thank you for pointing out okay, you've got, in addition to the thunder shirt, let me see if I can read this. In addition to the thunder shirt, most importantly, I told have the next year Boom Boom Man would make these loud noises again, and I'd remind her that we discussed it today last year. In fact, next year I reminded her, and she did remember that I had mentioned it the year before now, every year I go through the same procedure. Remember last year? And then next year, I'll remind you again about this year. You don't say what you're reminding her. Most importantly, we did the wrap and don't say more. So, oh, Amy, sorry, it says privately. I thank you for mentioning that, because what you're pointing out, I'm quite sure, knowing you, is listen, remember how okay this was. That's what's interesting, isn't it? We can take this down. Are there any more there? Or does anyone else have a comment or a question or an experience?
Do you remember the name of the first book that you mentioned?
Yes, of course. The first book I mentioned was Candace Pert's book. And I sent them to, I sent pictures. This is Molecules of Emotion. It's her research that's done at the National Institute of Health. And this research proving that the cells hold emotions and are connected through chemical connections actually won a Nobel Prize nomination. From Agnes. Oh, but it also says privately. Well, I shouldn't be, but you can all see it, so how can it be private?
I don't think they can see the private one, but we do have another question from Melissa.
Okay.
She's asking, when doing the TTouch method on the ears and tails, is there a particular time you should be doing them? For instance.
Oh, that's, yes, thank you. Do them when there is no trauma or fear, and get them used to it, so that, and watch the responses of your animals, because you want to do it in a way that they like it. Now, I see quite a few names. I know, and I want to show you a TTouch that I started doing about 8 years ago with the Grand Prix dressage horse, Weltall. And now I've used it very, very successfully. Rainey had a little different variation, but we've been using this on dogs and horses in this last week. And it's what I call the tantalizing tiger troika. I have to back up here a little bit. Just a moment. I've got to get my earphone thing in. Yeah. Now, it's very light, and it's like a whisper. You hold your fingers up, and it's just the lightest little, and this is the only circle that's done like over the skin. Normally, our TTouch, you catch the skin and just see right now, although his skin doesn't move, his fur does, and you see I'm not sliding over the skin. That's the basic TTouch, but with the one I'm talking about, it's like little circle very lightly, and then a circle and a half circle to the next one. Sorry, you all, I need help here, as you can see. Okay, and because I want you to see this, and you just do it all over the back, and it's just the lightest movement. And the thing is, they don't know where you're going to go next. And I was just working on a huge, great, really big Harlequin Great Dane in Minnesota 2 days ago. And he doesn't like strangers, because if you touch him, his skin just spasms. I mean, it really like a shock. And when I did this, oh my God, he just like he would lean up against me and want me, don't move, Linda, keep doing it. And it's really lovely. Circle over the skin, small one, thumb is on very lightly. It's like this movement, like that. And we call it the tantalizing tiger troika, because it's done, tiger's fingers like perpendicular to the body. And if you don't know the TTouch for you, that's for humans, with this, you can we'll send out a notice for all of you who registered and tell you how you can sign up for it, because it's a self-study group that goes on now for 6 months. We have 2 more months. Next Sunday is our 5th month. We've been doing it, and you can join us, and that you'll learn all of the pressures, because I'm doing that with a half a pressure, because TTouch we use from 1 to 10 pressures. On most dogs, it's a 1 to max a 4. It'll be like a really sportly, maybe a little overactive, like a Dobie or a big dog. You might use a 4 out of 10, but usually it's a 2, sometimes a 3. For those of you who have kitties watching, it's usually like 1 or 2. And this also works on kitties. So, no more questions. Our hour has run by. We've got 1 minute to the hour. It's been really a pleasure being with you. If you're not a member of our community, Tellington TTouch community, consider joining it. And take a look at those of you who are interested in this. When you go into understanding and learning and practicing like this on the TTouches for you, for yourself, for self-help, it really helps you with your animals. So Ross, George, thank you for hosting. It's always, I love working with you. And I look forward to seeing some of you next Saturday at 10 o'clock Pacific time. Is that right, Ross? I'm pretty sure. And we've got somebody's got their phone and their we've got to mute them, guys.
Hey, Linda.
Okay, so I guess Ross is off. So thank you all. We'll close this out, and I'd love to have you just send any comments or any other questions. You can send it to us at info@tellingtontouch.com, and we'll field those questions. And join us in the Tellington TTouch community, and you can have lots of answers from many experts and our practitioners and interested people from around the world. I see. Thanks, Agnes. Thank you very much. Aloha, everybody.